On the bitter cold evening of January 11th, 1788, in Italy, three soldiers were on the outskirts of Casperia heading back to Rome after delivering a message to another city. They were freezing and needed somewhere to stay for the night when they came upon a cottage in the forest. Upon entering, they found a young boy, 8 or 9 years of age, sitting in a chair. What happened the following day was what nightmares are made of. Upon returning to Rome, one of the soldiers, Luca Abramo, told the horrifying details of what happened in that forest to a priest. It was written down and hidden away, that is, until recently. It's been translated from Italian to English. It was very cold that night as we made our way back to Rome. We talked about pushing on, but ultimately decided to try and hunker down for the night. No sooner had we talked about it, we came upon a small cottage. As we got closer, we could see there appeared to be light coming through a crack in the door, so we naturally assumed there were people living there. We knocked on the door and no one answered, so we slowly entered. As we opened the door, I was surprised to see a young boy sitting in front of a fire, who appeared to be by himself. He didn't turn to look at us as we came inside, which I thought was odd. Enzo, one of my fellow soldiers, then asked him what I'd been thinking. "Boy, where's your family?" At first he said nothing as he continued staring into the fire. After a long silence, he replied saying, "I shall show you." I immediately sensed something was wrong. It wasn't what he said, it was the way he said it that scared me. Enzo then walked up to him, got in his face, and asked again, "Boy, tell me where your family is." This time he said nothing and would not even look at Enzo, who pressed him for more information. "At least tell us what your name is," he asked. Again, nothing. We shrugged our shoulders as we gave each other concerned looks. We were extremely tired and decided it was too late. Whatever it was, we'd deal with it in the morning. We decided to take turns keeping watch. Normally, we wouldn't do this, but something made us feel uneasy. I was up first as I sat down at the table not too far away from the boy as Enzo and Santino went and lay down on the opposite side of the cottage. I sat there watching the boy as he continued staring into the fire. It was difficult not falling asleep as I had to constantly wake myself up. When my turn was over, I woke up Enzo, then went and lay down, quickly drifting off to sleep. "Come with me. I will show you where my family is," said the boy as he stood over me. I nearly jumped out of my skin as I awoke. I grumbled to myself as I looked over at Santino, who was supposed to be keeping watch, but was fast asleep at the table. I then looked up at the boy, who appeared as if he was burning a hole in my soul by the way he was staring at me. His face was emotionless. Something is definitely not right with him, I thought to myself. "Santino, wake up! You fell asleep, you bastard," I yelled out as I stood up. What happened?" replied Santino as he nearly fell off the chair. Enzo, who was now waking up, said, "Let's get a move on. We still have a ways to go, and not to mention we still have to help this boy." We started gathering our things as the boy stood there quietly gazing at us. "Now, where is your family?" Enzo asked him. "I shall show you," he replied as he started heading towards the door, then going outside. We looked at each other, then started following him. Once outside, he started walking in a direction that would take us further away from Rome. This agitated me, as we'd already been walking for several days and I was longing to be at home. I very well knew we couldn't leave someone his age out here alone, so I accepted it and pressed on. I was thankful, though, it wasn't snowing and the sun was shining. As we followed him through the forest, I took notice of how fast he walked. He didn't turn around, nor did he talk. I was in the lead behind the boy and would stop from time to time to see if Enzo and Santino were keeping up. After walking for quite some time, the boy suddenly stopped and turned around looking at me. "It's just over the hill," he said as he pointed. I waited for the others to catch up before continuing. "He said it's just over this hill," I said. "What's just over the hill, boy?" asked Enzo. "My family. They are in there, in the dark," he replied. "What does that mean?" asked Santino. "You shall see," replied the boy. He then started walking up the hill as we followed him. I was getting tired, and all that was going through my mind was going back home as I angrily climbed the hill. Once we reached the top, I looked down and was somewhat surprised to see what appeared to be a giant old tomb at the bottom among some trees. Before I could ask, Enzo spoke up in an angered tone. Is your family in that tomb, boy? Are they dead? No, they're hiding in there, the boy replied as he stared at the tomb. Then, without hesitation, the boy started walking down the hill. I paused, not wanting to go any further as Santino took off after him, followed by Enzo. After contemplating what to do, I went against my gut and followed them anyway. When we made it to the entrance of the tomb, we could see the door was wide open. You could see a ways in, then it suddenly went completely black. The boy then walked up the steps and went inside. Hold on, wait for us, shouted Enzo. His words fell on deaf ears as he continued walking straight into the darkness. What in God's holy name do we do now? Asked Santino. I guess we follow him, which is the last thing I want to do. But God Almighty, we've come this far, Enzo angrily replied. I don't know. Let's turn around and go home. Judging by how far we've come, we may have to spend another night in that cottage, if we can even find it, that is, I said. I have a son his age at home and would not like someone leaving him in the middle of nowhere, in the cold, responded Santino. Right, we need to find him and his family. Maybe they're in there and they're hurt. Let's get it over with so we can leave, said Enzo. I shook my head, not liking it, but kept my mouth shut. Before going inside, we grabbed some branches and made torches. I made sure I was the last one going in as I watched them slowly walk up the steps and go inside. As we approached the spot where darkness started, Enzo, who was in the lead somewhat far ahead of us, stopped, looked back at us, and gave us a look I shall never forget. I was about to ask him what was wrong when he turned around and continued walking into the darkness and was suddenly gone. Enzo, where are you? Shouted Santino, who'd frozen in his tracks. I was about to turn around and run when we heard someone in the darkness whisper, Come, I shall show you. Let's leave, Santino, I whispered loudly, scared out of my wits. We can't leave our brother behind. Stop being a coward, he replied. I took a deep breath and said, Fine, let's hurry and find him. We then slowly crept up to where the darkness started. As we stepped inside the darkness, I heard a voice behind me say, I shall show you. I decided that was enough and turned to leave, but was suddenly surrounded by complete darkness. Santino, Enzo, I yelled out. Luca, where are you? Asked Santino. I don't know, brother. I'm surrounded in utter darkness, I replied. Me too. I can't see a thing, he responded. I thought about drawing my weapon, but realized it wouldn't do me any good if I can't see. I knelt down, grabbed my flint and steel from my satchel and tried lighting my torch, but to no avail. It would not light. Keep talking, and I'll try finding you, I said as I stood up. All right, we need to find Enzo and get the hell out of here, replied Santino. He started talking about his family as I tried following his voice. As I walked towards where I thought his voice was coming from, he only seemed to be getting further away. Santino, are you moving? You're going further away, I said. No, I'm standing in the exact same spot, he replied. What is happening? Is this some sort of witchcraft or evil? I thought to myself. See if you can light your torch. I tried, but mine would not light, I said. All right, I'll give it a try, he replied. I could then hear the sounds of his flint and steel, but could not see the sparks in the darkness. No luck, it won't light. What do we do? Asked Santino. I don't know, brother, I replied. Right then, I heard what sounded like scurrying, only it was coming from above us. I instinctively looked up, even though I was shrouded in darkness. Santino, do you hear that? I asked. I do. What is that? He replied. I have no idea, but it's above us. We need to get out of here, I said in a frightened tone. Yes, but how do we do that? He asked. Find a wall and start walking, I replied. I then stretched out my arms and started walking, hoping I'd bump into a wall. I could then hear Santino walking around when I heard the cold, disturbing voice of the boy say, Naberius, Almoste, I've brought you something. I immediately stopped moving, and whatever had been on the ceiling dropped to the floor and started running. "Luca, the boy is in here," shouted Santino. The running suddenly stopped as it went dead silent. I was about to call out to Santino when he started shrieking at the top of his lungs, followed by, "Luca, help!" which was quickly cut off. Fear surged through me as I started fumbling my way along in the dark, not knowing where I was going, only that I wanted to get out of there fast. After falling down several times, I finally found a wall. I kept my hands on the wall as I moved along as fast as I could. I'm not sure how far I went when I tripped on something that sent me to the ground. I quickly got up, put my hands back on the wall, then stopped to listen. There was nothing but silence as I stuck my foot out to see if I could tell what I'd tripped over. It was somewhat soft and moved slightly if I put enough pressure on it. It then hit me. It was a body. I took a deep breath and calmly said to myself, "Luca, move. Get out of here." I stepped over the body and continued moving along the wall until my lead foot hit something hard that felt like a wall. I lifted up my foot and stuck it out to see if it was indeed a wall, but quickly realized they were steps in front of me, going up. As I made my way up the steps, I couldn't help but think I was next. Nothing is scarier than being in complete darkness knowing something is after you. I kept moving until I came to a wooden door. I pushed on it, but it wouldn't budge. I felt around for a handle, and once I found it, pushed again, and it still wouldn't budge. I then pulled, and the door started moving towards me. As I was pulling the door open, I heard the scurrying again, coming up the stairs straight for me. This time, it sounded like there were more than one of them. I started panicking, almost falling down the steps, but was able to hang on to the door handle. Once the door was open wide enough for me to go through, I started running as fast as my legs would go. I ran and ran until it went from being complete darkness to suddenly seeing the sun shining through the trees. It was like passing through a door that was not there. As I continued running, I realized I was back at the entrance of the tomb. Once outside, I had to stop to catch my breath. As I stood there looking into the entrance of the tomb, wondering what just happened, 3 boys appeared at the edge of the darkness. One of them was the boy from the cottage, and the other 2 appeared to be 12 to 13 years of age. They stood there, staring at me, their faces emotionless. I waited for them to come after me, but could see one of them looking down at the line of light in front of them, then looking back at me and not moving. It was as if they couldn't leave the darkness as they stood there glaring at me. Why had the boy from the cottage been able to? I thought. I shook my head, being scared and confused, not knowing the answers. I was going to call out to them, but the look on their faces was that of something so sinister, like the look a wolf gives its prey before it kills it. After catching my breath, I started heading back the way that would take me to Rome. I took a slightly different path than the way we'd come in case I might get followed. I hadn't walked very far before I came to a grove of trees that appeared to form a large circle. As I walked inside the circle of trees, I nearly screamed aloud as I crossed myself and started praying. There, fairly high in the trees, were the naked bodies of 4 people, nailed to the trees as if they'd been crucified. There were 2 young girls, and most likely their parents. It didn't take long to figure out this was the family of the boy from the cottage. I made the decision to continue walking all night if I had to until I made it back to Rome. At the bottom of the transcript were some notes from the priest. Luca mentioned the names Naberius and Asmodee. They are 2 ancient demons. Naberius is a cunning demon whose real form is that of a man, but whose head is that of a ram. Asmodee, a wicked demon, whose real form is that of a man, but whose head is that of a bull. 2 days later, we dispatched a group of soldiers to the area Luca had described. They found the tomb, but nothing like he'd described, other than the bodies of those who'd been buried there for quite some time. They did find the remaining family members still crucified to the trees. They were taken down and buried by their cottage. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe.